every freaking night and every freaking day. And you take the piss out of my singing, Ben.
Who was that? Was that you, Ben?
That was me, yeah.
Star Command, I'm approaching the escape hatch. Prepare for liftoff.
Hey, party people, over 12 here, and welcome to the 22nd Suburban Gooner podcast, the age that Chris was when he finally reached puberty. We've got Chris and Ben with us, and the one and only FK. How are you doing, FK?
I'm really well, thanks guys for having me on. How are you guys?
Chris, Ben, how are you?
All good, thank you.
I was good until you decided.
Yeah, I really enjoyed
the
that.
tone of this podcast. If it's going to be like that, then it's on. It's on like Donkey Kong.
On like Donkey Kong BH. Sorry, I know I wasn't supposed to tell anyone, Chris. So today being the 31st, I think we should start with, obviously, it's 13 years to the day that Mr. Rocastle passed away, so there's been a lot of blogs going around. Does anyone actually want to say anything? Because I am unlucky enough to not actually have a very good memory. I think I was 7 when he left us. So who wants to start by saying something?
Let's let our guest.
Go on, FK.
Fantastic.
Thanks. Again, like some of you, I didn't really have the privilege of watching him live in my adult state. I remember watching him as a kid, and he was one of the many reasons why I decided to support Arsenal, because he was just, everything about him was so classy. He had so many tricks, and he was just a proper player. And in terms of the sort of like the legacy or the reputation that he's kind of left behind, the fact that everyone talks about him so fondly, the fact that everyone talks about him being such a great talent, just kind of goes to show that, you know, when all fans are in agreement about one player, yeah, you know, there's no debate whether he was good or questionably good. He was just outstanding, and when people talk about him in that kind of conversation, then you know that he must have been an absolutely special player. And the whole quote about remembering who you are and what you are and who you represent, that just kind of goes down. And he's just a brilliant player. And the goal he scored against Manchester United at Old Trafford, I don't know if you've seen that on YouTube footage, but it was some goal. I mean, he had some serious ability, and like you say, he was taken away too early.
Yeah. And number 16, on our voted by the fans. 16 of the top 50 Arsenal players of all time.
Brilliant player. He was my first ever, because that was just when I was like properly getting into football and understanding it. He was my first ever proper favourite player. And then I sort of, when he went off to Leeds, I then shifted to Merse. But he was just a fantastic player. And I did actually see him a couple of times in the flesh, but I was so young, I wasn't able to appreciate it. And yeah, he's a brilliant player and such a humble person as well. But you hear about stories from lots of different people about how he was just such a nice person. And I was actually in the Tollington with his son Ryan on Saturday, and yeah, I think he was very humbled as well, because when everybody started singing "Oh Rocky Rocky," he was just kind of like, you know, and a few of us turned and sort of just raised our glasses, and he just sort of he looked a bit I think sheepish, but I mean he could be so proud that he had a dad with such talent and such a nice person as well.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think also, sorry, I was just going to say, I think also when you talk about football, there's always certain images that will always stay with you. And for me, there's that photo of him with his thumbs up, and that photo, it just, you know, everything's going to be all right. You know, he's that kind of player. He's gonna give us all for that game, and that image will always stick with me. So the moment anyone says Rocastle, that's the first picture that comes up. And I remember last season when the club did a little sort of tribute to him when we had a game on match day, and it was a brilliant reception that he had, and they showed that picture on the big screens, and it was just so emotional. So that image is just such a powerful image. Yeah,
that must have been very emotional for his son, actually, Chris, at the pub.
I think it was. Yeah, I think that's obviously why he was kind of a little bit sort of maybe overwhelmed with it all. Yeah. It's just, but they're such a, by all accounts, they seem like such a lovely family, and he was such an. All you hear from all of the pros is that. All the ex-pros is that he was such a nice person as well. Nobody has got anything other than fantastic things to say about him.
Yeah. I've just gone onto the Arsenal website to look at the list, because he's number 16, so he's beat players like Pat Rice, Ray Parlour, Keown, Petit, Merson, Smith, So you can see obviously what high regard he would held as a player and as a person.
Mm.
Cool. Okay. Well, Swansea game. Chris, do you want to talk about that to start with?
Yeah, it was disappointing, wasn't it? I mean, the first half. Do you know what really surprised me? I expected a reaction, and in the first half, we didn't really seem to get anything. But what surprised me more than anything else, I don't know whether it was because of the opponents that we were up against, but I think the mood of the crowd seemed to reflect the lethargy of the actual players as well. Because I was just looking around, and even before Boney got that first goal. There didn't seem to be the same energy that there was this weekend just gone by against Manchester City. I don't know why that was. I don't know whether we as fans and the players just assumed that Swansea, they were in poor form. And Ben, you said it on last week's pod that they weren't playing well, and all of a sudden, we find ourselves 1 down at half time. The response in the second half was really, really good, and shoddy last minute free ricochets aside, we come away with 3 points and we win 2-1. So, I don't know. Ben?
Yeah, I'll just echo what you said there. I think we did what we needed to do, didn't we? And then unfortunately in the 88th minute or 87th minute, they've got the scabbiest goal of all time. Mentally, I was going into City, I was a bit worried that would have basically just knocked the stuffing out of them. But it just wasn't meant to be, was it? Everything sort of went against us there. We went 1-0 down from a very easy goal. Bonnie's a fantastic striker, but he just walked through our defence with ease and with a fantastic finish put us 1-0 down. And Steve's BFF, Lucas Podolski, comes on the field and shows us exactly what he's all about. He's impact. He's fantastic. End product. He's for end product. There's not many like him about, and he did what he needed to do. We got ahead, and then unfortunately it just went wrong. And the fans obviously not pleased because of what happened against Chelsea, and it's completely understandable. But it's just one of those goals that you can do nothing about. I'm afraid it's just bad luck.
I love you, Ben.
That's all right.
How about you, FK?
Yeah, look, I've got to echo the sentiments of the guys so far. I mean, it was really disappointing, particularly when you claw back from 1-0 down and go 2-1 up with just a few minutes to go. You need to have the maturity to see out games like that. And like the guys have already said, after the 6-0 at Stamford Bridge, you expected a response. They had a media blackout. You kind of thought that something was brewing behind the scenes, and we never really got going. The first half we didn't. I thought we'd fly up the blocks. Really press them high up the pitch and have a quick tempo about our game. But in the end, it was quite a flat performance. And like Chris said, I mean, it kind of just summarised the atmosphere as well. Also, so really disappointed. I think had we have won that game undeservedly, because I think that's another thing. Swansea didn't deserve to lose that game. I thought we did. We didn't probably do enough to win it, and I think had we have won it, it probably would have been a bit harsh on them. But I expected a response, didn't quite get it, and I thought that would play on our minds going into the City game. With Podolski, completely agree. He's definitely an impact player. He comes on from the subs bench. He can change games. He's quite ruthless in front of goal. Unfortunately, he couldn't get the winner against City on Saturday. But it was just really frustrating to kind of lose that game when you expected so much more. And I think that maybe spelt the end of our title bid that day. So disappointing for me.
Yeah.
Do you know what's interesting as well? How the timing of goals changes the narrative. Because if we'd have gone 2-0 down, let's just say we conceded that second goal, that scabby second goal, very early in the second half, but we get 2 goals in the last 5 minutes to draw 2-2, and people are talking about the spirit and the fight back, and we didn't get the result, but we fought back and at least we've got a point. And it's amazing how, because we conceded that last minute goal, that narrative has essentially set the tone of a very disappointing performance.
It was just so, I think, because we went elation to disappointment in such a short period of time. The goals were within a minute of each other when we scored, weren't they? And you're kind of elated. And even when their goal went in, the second one, it was kind of a weird moment because the angle that I sit, so I'm behind the away dugout, and I can see the ball going to an Arsenal player. But obviously, you can't see the angle, the speed, and stuff. So, kind of in that split second, you're almost expecting the Arsenal player to clear it, but unfortunately, it just hit Flamini and went in. So it was horrible, wasn't it?
It was just so unlucky, the fact that
Yeah,
the guy took the shot, shanked it off Mertesacker, hits Szczesny in the chest, and it bounces off
Yeah.
Flamini's knee. It's just, I've seen us score some horrific own goals, but that's just we took it to a whole new level with that, and it's just nothing you can do about it. But I think it's more the build-up that was the disappointing disappointing part about it, where we sort of lost the ball in midfield and they've got into that position. It's sort of been a theme, hasn't it, in sort of some games where we were Everton 1-1 at home, we get the goal, and then we throw away the lead. Delafeu with an excellent goal, and it's been a bit of a theme, and that's the worry, is when we get back into those winning positions, they need to like grasp it and make sure they can get over the line, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think you're both right, Chris and FK, about the atmosphere as well. It was a weird atmosphere, but I suppose it was a weird feeling going into the game. I think I said to you the day of it, Chris, I didn't really know how I felt before the game after that drubbing. It was an odd feeling, but getting there was more empty seats than I imagined.
Yeah.
And actually around there wasn't as many regulars as usual as well, so it was quite a different experience actually.
On the TV, it looked empty.
Really?
You could visibly see that it was empty, but it was obviously it was the debate, wasn't it? Talking about social media, about how people were talking about the manager's got to go and something needs to change, and it's that gut reaction that people have when they sort of panic and they go into their shells. But I was a bit disappointed to see how many weren't there. You kind of got to back the team when they're winning and losing. I think it's a two-way street, isn't it?
I don't get that though, because I pay a bloody fortune for my season ticket, so I'm going to go to absolutely every single game that I possibly can. I'm not going to miss it, and if I am going to miss it, I'll make sure that I sell the ticket so that I get some money for it. I don't understand the concept of just, I think I'll just sack it off this week. It baffles me. Like, I spent best part of, I'm 31 now, so I've spent at least more than 2/3 of my life dreaming to get a season ticket. So when I got my season ticket 6 years ago, it was like, this is the most amazing thing ever. I get to go and watch Arsenal every week, just like I wanted to when I was a kid. And I don't know, do people fall out of love with it or what? I don't get it.
Yeah, no. I'm still in my honeymoon period. I know this is my first year, so I wouldn't even consider it. And like you say, they cost a fortune, so you've got to make the most out of them as well. So moving on to something a bit happier.
Yes.
Not amazingly happier, but definitely happier in terms of the previous results. The Man City game. For me, I want to pick out Thomas Vermaelen. I thought he had a really good game, especially aerially. What did you think of the game, Ben?
I thought it was fantastic to see the team play to their strengths, but also understand their limitations. They played how we want to see Arsenal play when things aren't going our way. You look at the lineup and you were sort of worried about pace and runners. It's the current argument, isn't it? The thing that we're all worried about and what we haven't got. But we went that goal down, and then I don't know about you guys, but I sort of worried for another maybe 2, 3, maybe some quick goals in succession. But they didn't. They pressed highly. And you can see why Arsene has a lot of faith in Rosicky, because his calmness in possession is magnificent. You can't buy that, the ability he has on the ball. And he led from the front and he was pushing them. And then you've got Flamini as well, that, again, he's more like a leader vocally than he is actually technically with the football. But it was magnificent to see. And again, Steve's mate Podolski proving his worth. It was just nice to get back on track, wasn't it? And that's what it all was about. I saw someone write on Twitter, apologies, I can't remember who it was. They said it was just all about stemming the bleeding. Apologies for the horrific term, but that's what it was about, wasn't it? It was about getting back on track and proving what we're all about. But very pleased with that. I was very pleased with that.
Yeah, showing some fight as well. How about you, FK?
I think after the Swansea game and going into the City game with so many injuries, I feared the worst. I've got to be honest, before going into the game, I thought we could get an absolute tonking, sort of, 3-0, 4-0. And when we went 1-0 down, I panicked. I thought we'd maybe collapse, but actually, with hindsight, walking away from the game, I was actually disappointed that we only drew, because I thought we played really well, particularly second half. We pressed really well. Rosicky was outstanding. Cazorla, almost back to his best. He's just so good on the ball. And actually, when you consider the players that we had missing, I know people keep saying about injuries, but it is a bit of a crisis at Arsenal when you've got 4 of your 5 starting midfielders out. That's Walcott, Ramsey, Ozil and Wilshere. They would have made a massive difference. But, we are where we are, and it was a good reaction considering a traumatic week. And I think mentally, the players showed that they could handle it, because City are frightening. When you see their squad on paper and you realise just how good they can be and how they were blowing teams away for fun, and the resources that they've got, the players they have on their bench, let alone, the ones that were missing. We could quite easily have collapsed. So I was really proud of the boys. It was a good fight. They played with passion. They played with a lot of desire. And actually, as a football fan, that's all you want to see every week. As long as they're giving their best every week, that's all you can ask for. And actually, maybe disappointed that we couldn't sneak a win. And Hart made a good save from Podolski late on. So fair result, but good game.
That was the moment, wasn't it? And you looked up and you saw it was Podolski, and you're almost celebrating already. And it just clips off his heel.
I don't know about you guys, but I don't know how much Hart actually knew about that.
No,
people talk about an amazing, and you do wonder in terms of the league title. So Pellegrini, in my opinion, he was quite happy to take a draw, particularly when he brought Garcia on towards the end. I think he was more than happy with a draw.
Made the Milner sub as well, didn't he? So I think that was more defensive.
Boring James Milner. Yeah.
Navas.
I actually quite like James Milner.
Sorry. You're boring as well, so.
Oh, yeah.
And you even said that in a boring voice.
Well.
I actually like James Milner as well. I don't think Hart knew much about that, and I don't know. It feels like sometimes when you're going to be league champions, like things tend to go that way for you in certain games, and that's the sort of something that. Had that been up the other end, you just know it probably have ricocheted off of Szczesny's ankle, hit both posts, smashed Mertesacker in the face, and then gone in over the line or something. But that sort of stuff is falling to them. I think they will. I suspect they will probably win the league. But yeah, like FK said, it was a very accomplished second half. I thought we basically took on what I think is probably the best team in the division. And we went pound for pound for them, and we managed to come away being frustrated. I think the thing that frustrated me as well was I thought to myself, if you replicate that performance and the defensive solidity away at the Etihad, you don't lose 6-3. And it's so many times that they've just, away from home, they've just not been able to replicate some of the defensive as I said, defensive solidity and the strength at the back, and that's been our downfall at times. But injuries have played a massive part, and hopefully over the next few weeks we can start to see some more pace returning back to the side with players like Ramsey, and then a bit more guile with Ozil, because they look like they need it. I mean, I'm glad we've got a week off, because they do look a bit down on their feet, don't they?
Yeah. What did you think of Vermaelen, Chris? Sorry, Ben.
I thought he did all right, actually. Yeah, I've criticised him a little bit over the last few weeks, but I thought he did well enough, and he's obviously been a bit ring rusty, so he's coming back into it. And we need him, because I always think it's a bit ominous. I don't know, Ben and FK, what you think about this, but I think it's ominous when Arsenal's not even talking about return dates for Koscielny.
Maybe they've given up predicting the dates. Do you think, FK?
I think, it's actually quite interesting. I think given the injury situation at Arsenal and our history of having these injuries, I think the club could have maybe handled the PR side of things a bit better. They know that football fans spaz out at the very, sound of 3 weeks, 2 weeks, little bit niggle kind of stuff. And I think actually they can manage our expectations better. So when Ramsey's on the verge of coming back, then let's not get people's hopes up and say he should be training next week or in 2 weeks' time. Let's just let's be very pessimistic about return dates, and that way you minimise the the breakdowns that we get on social media nowadays. Koscielny, from what you kind of see or read, he shouldn't be out for too long, dare I say. Might be back for the semi-final, but whether he plays or not, with all due respect to Wigan, you've got to be beating Wigan, in the semi-final. And Vermaelen, when he's come in, to be fair to the boy, he has done pretty okay. He's done well. I mean, you'd be hard pushed to find a better backup centre back in the Premier League. Yeah, I know he got beaten easy for that header against Boney, but the game's against at Old Trafford, and he's stepped in for a few games, and he's not done too bad. So, that'd be my thoughts on Koscielny. I really hope he comes back because he's brilliant.
Do you know what I think they should do? I think what they should do is Arsenal should just not give any return dates, and the only way we find out about players returning is they wheel in a big cake at the press conferences, and that player that's now fully fit bursts out of it.
Ta-da!
Do we get to eat the cake?
No, because the journos would probably they'd probably scoop it all up and take it to the Chelsea press conference and hand it to Mourinho.
No, they'd eat it and then they'd cuss it to death in the paper the next day, even if it was the nicest cake in the world. Before we move on from that game, I just want to touch on a couple of players. So Podolski, Ben, you're right in terms of the cross. I actually tweeted at half-time, we need Podolski on the end of his own crosses. I didn't expect Flamini to be the one popping up on the end of a Podolski cross to score. And actually, at that point in time, we had Arteta on the edge of the box and Flamini in the box scoring. So I don't know what's going on with those two. In terms of injuries, guys, of all the days, tomorrow, April Fool's, Diaby is back in full training. So I don't know what's going on there. If this is some joke from the club, I saw someone tweet, Diaby's back in the next few days. Maybe he'll be ready for the FA Cup semi-final, which I responded with, if Diaby's back in the next few days, he'll be injured by the FA Cup semi-final. What do you think the lineup will be at Everton, FK?
Well, I don't think Diaby will be back for that for sure. And just on Diaby, he is the most wonderfully gifted footballer. But I just think the injuries have completely knackered him, and I think the club have to make a really serious call now. Yeah. You either let him go, wish him all the best, and sort of thanks for trying. We've really been patient with him, and it's a case. Football's not really about sentiment anymore. You've got to free up some wages and bring someone else in who can maybe do a job. But to answer your question, Everton, in terms of lineup, I can't see much changing, if I'm being honest, because we're literally down to our bare bones. Yeah, defensively, you would expect Szczesny to start, Sanya, Gibbs, Vermaelen and Mertesacker. Middle two will probably, again, be Arteta, Flamini, with maybe Kallstrom. He might come in. He looked quite impressive for the last 20 minutes against Swansea. Yeah. But I think, away at Goodison, Arteta is going to be right up for that, and he'd be vying for a starting spot at his old stomping ground. And then, of course, in midfield, you've got to have Rosicky after such an amazing performance against City. If he's got it in him, he might be knackered. Cazorla and Podolski again and Giroud up top. So I can't see much change, but that's purely because we've got such a thin squad.
How about you, Ben?
Yeah, I've got to echo what FK said, really. And to sort of go back to what you were saying, it was interesting previously, about Flamini and Arteta. It was nice to see that they're starting to get a bit of connection.
Yes.
Because for his goal, you see Flamini run, then he actually goes, hang on a sec, I've got to check where I am. He turns to see Arteta, and then Arteta almost waves him on to say, go for it. And I think, as we saw at City, it's about, as I've already said, it's about playing to the player's strengths. I was very pleased to see the Santi that we know and love back again, because again we played to his strengths. He was able to sort of dictate the play and the tempo in high areas, and that's when he's most effective, because we know about his negatives and limitations, that he doesn't have the ability. We saw what David Silva can do compared to Cazorla at the weekend. He doesn't have the ability to run past people and the dynamism that Rosicky has. But if we can play to our strengths, I think we can get 3 points at Goodison Park.
How about you, Chris?
I would say no changes, but I echo your sentiments about Cazorla. He was brilliant at the weekend. It's like he's got some sort of some sort of amazing some sort of adhesive stuck to his boots sometimes. He's just his touch is phenomenal, and his vision and his ability to change his sort of the weight distribution of his body so that he can shift the ball either side is brilliant. I think he's going to be vitally important. How do Everton play? I mean, through Martinez, they play. It's a lot of the ball on the deck. It's quick interchanges of passing. It's very similar to our style, isn't it? So, do you counteract that with just go blow for blow, or do you try something with a bit more? I mean, do we need more pace up front? I don't know.
You need to press them because, as we've seen in the last 2 or 3 games that we've played them, their game plan is basically spread the play and try and get Barkley in between the lines so he has enough space to run. When we played them at home, they basically were isolating Arteta at every opportunity. So we were having time to run at the defence and turn our midfield. And when we played them in the FA Cup for his assist, where he pretty much ran the pitch, same sort of thing. Flamini couldn't take him out because he'd already been previously done by him 2 minutes earlier.
Yeah.
He gets acres to run. He's so powerful. He's a fantastic footballer, and he just runs, and that's how he plays. He sort of builds the play to give Barkley space to turn our defence, and I think you've got to do what we did because interesting quotes from Arsene on pressing, and he says we've got to do it as a team. Obviously, you can't do it as individuals. I don't know if you remember talking about this, Chris, but Steve Bowles saying that we're not good enough to press as a team, like physically and mentally. We don't have the capabilities to do it. So it'll be. I'd love to see the second half against City, against Everton, that sort of style where we just pin them back and take the pressure off us and put it on them and see how they can cope with it, because we're the champions of the top 4 trophy. So let's see if they can.
The champions.
Let's see if they can handle what we've got.
I think the interesting about Martinez is that he will change it if it's not working as well. So he made a sub at half time, didn't he, yesterday? He brought Naismith on, who really changed the game. So that'll be interesting. Talking of, before we kind of fully move on, actually, so go back to the City game. We've all kind of mentioned a few players and how well they played. Because I agree completely. You know, Cazorla was kind of back to his best and taking people on. Who would you have given man the match to, FK?
It would have been Rosicky without question. I thought every time he gets the ball, he picks. You know, he's such a ball of energy. You know, he always looks up, drives us forward, quick. You know, speedens up our tempo of play. I thought he was just brilliant. He was getting around the place. You know, really showing his leadership. So for me, he was the standout candidate. Cazorla was good, as we've all kind of said, but Rosicky was something else. And against such high class opposition, for what is he, 33? He just ran all game. He was just brilliant to watch.
What did you think of the penalty incident?
The one where Rosicky went down.
Yeah.
I sit behind the north, in the north bank behind the goal. So when I first saw it, when I saw it live, I thought, it's got to be a penalty. But then, you know, we'd heard at half time that actually he didn't touch him, and I came home, watched the game, watched the highlights, and I don't think it was a penalty. So Dean, as much as we hate him, probably got that decision just right.
Unfortunately, the offside was right as well. It was gutting, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was frustrating. I mean, for Flamini to find the net twice in game. I just want to say also on the Everton game, I think it's quite important that we watch fullbacks because Coleman and Baines are superb forward, and actually it's not so much about pressing. I think it's just about if we drop deep too much and to come onto us, they will make those overlapping runs. And Podolski and Cazorla are not best known for tracking back. So what you need to do is to prevent them from coming forward, play Podolski and Cazorla much higher up the pitch so that they don't want to leave them exposed. So I think those two are going to be the danger men for us.
Yeah.
Do you think then that you could play, I guess this is back at you, FK, do you think you could then play Rosicky in the hole with Arteta and Flamini sitting behind him, so that because Rosicky's the sort of person that will track back, and then you've got Arteta and Flamini that can almost, if Rosicky's then tracking back, to almost make it 3 defensive midfielders, if you like, then you've got the 2 either side of him that could then press out wide, and you've still got those 2 defensive midfielders whilst one of them pushes out wide if you've got overlapping fullbacks.
Yeah, you probably could. I mean, there's no footballing ability wise. Rosicky could do it. I'd prefer Cazorla in that position, if I'm being honest, and Rosicky out wide because I think he tracks back much better. Arteta's the interesting one. You know, he's a player that Everton use defensively, and we've kind of turned him into this deep lying defensive midfielder stroke playmaker, if you like. And actually, if he does play in that kind of central role, then he and Rosicky can kind of swap. And Arteta's brilliant going forward. We just don't see enough of it at
Yeah.
Arsenal. But whoever we play, I think the key message needs to be watch your runners, track your runners, because Barry and what's the guy's name from Wigan? McCarthy.
Partly.
Yeah, Barry just sits and plays. McCarthy moves a lot, and Lukaku, Barkley, and the two wing backs. They're going to be running all over the place. And Naismith, I can't remember who one of you mentioned it. He came on at half time. He's a real handful in terms of movement, and you switch off for 30 seconds. A little dink ball through, and all of a sudden you're in trouble. I also think it's important that we get the first goal because we need to quieten that crowd. They're in good form at the minute, and Goodison Park can be quite a noisy place.
Yeah, they are. They're in great form. So, Ben, first man of the match against Man City, and then a bit on the Everton game.
I pretty much echo what FK said. I think he's bang on about Rosicky. He's a sublime player, and he plays as if he's like 25, doesn't he? Not like he's 33. I think just we're very lucky to have him, really. I'm a massive fan of his. Everton, we've been playing a sort of a 4-3-3 recently to sort of carry on with what Chris was talking about. We've been switching between sitting deep, inviting pressure and catching teams on the break, but we haven't got the players to get up the pitch so quickly. So I think the joy of having Cazorla and Rosicky is that they can pretty much switch. But my worry is that you lose Rosicky when he's in that inside forward role. And I quite like him at number 10 because he has the ability to take past players, open up space for others. So I think you've just you can't really predict because you start becoming a sort of caught by what possibly could happen. So I don't know really. As I said, and what FK has already said, you've got to watch the fullbacks, and I think we've just got to press high and just try and catch them in possession because Barry and McCarthy are very good at their jobs, but when they have the ball, I don't think they're the best, and I think that's where we're going to get time, is if we give Cazorla the ability to have the ball between those two, that's where we're going to cause our damage.
Chris, man of the match?
Well, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to go for Cazorla from the Man City game because I just thought that he was his tiny little awesome Spaniardness back to his old self, and it just felt like he was just everything good seemed to go through him. So, and also just to be a little bit different, that would be my thoughts on the Everton game. Let's just not lose at the moment. I mean, it's at a stage where a defeat could be quite punishing for us, but a draw still keeps us at arm's length, at least with Everton, with it all in our own hands, and we'd have 5 games remaining, 3 of which are at home, 2 are away, and you'd fancy our chances in all of those games. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I think for me, I'd definitely go over Rosicky as man of the match. The reason I asked is because it was on when you read Twitter, people kind of Cazorla, Flamini came in, but I just thought Rosicky was absolutely amazing in that game. So I'd definitely go with him. In terms of Everton, completely agree what everybody said. It's an interesting one, Everton, actually, because I wonder what they're going to do next year if they don't finish in the top 4 and don't have a bit of extra cash, because they'll lose Lukaku, they'll lose Deulofeu. I don't know what Barry's going to do because he's a free agent, isn't he? So they might hang on to him, but it's going to be Barkley's probably going to somebody's going to come in.
Someone's got to buy him. I really like him a lot. It's got to be Chelsea, isn't it? Somehow they're going to do some dodgy deal with Lukaku and Barkley or something like that.
That's an interesting one. But surely if Lukaku's available, Everton won't be the ones that snap him up.
No, but I mean in some sort of swap deal or something. I'm just thinking and being silly, but I can't see how. If you look at Chelsea, an English quota, if they're losing sort of Terry and Lampard soon, he would be ideal for them, wouldn't he? Imagine him at number 10 for Chelsea. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, he's a great player. I think if Barkley goes to Brazil, I think that might secure Everton another year. I think Martinez has done enough to kind of show that he's got something about him, and he might sit him down in the summer and say, "Look, lad, you went to Brazil, you've done that off your own back through playing at Everton. Get another full season under your belt, and then with our blessing, you can choose any club you kind of want to go to." And you kind of feel that United, maybe Chelsea would go in for him, and I'd love to see us going for someone like that. But we've got so many players in that kind of position. If he does stay there for another year, then of course, I don't know how much longer Rosicky or even Cazorla's going to go on at this kind of pace, and it would be a very interesting coup for us. But it'd be a shame to let him go. And just on the subject of Lukaku, I mean, Arsene Wenger gets a lot of criticism for making some crazy decisions in the transfer market. But could you imagine if your manager had sold Sturridge and loaned out Lukaku and then lost and then lost the league title because of not being able to beat teams like Palace? I mean, that would be embarrassing.
Yeah,
and then threatened the ball boy.
About him, though. They won't whinge about him.
Nah, because he's a great man. I mean, I hate him as a man, but as a manager, he is quite something.
Ben, I clearly saw him chin the ball boy.
Well, I was going to say, if any grown man threatens like a 10-year-old child,
especially when you see the picture of the boy's face, you can see the fear, and he's just a kid. Yeah, I mean, to be honest,
I can't believe it hasn't been made. More has been made of it. Like, I
was surprised he didn't go off to call his wife 2 minutes before the game.
Cool. Okay, so we're kind of coming towards the end now, guys. So before we move on, what we do know, FK, is just ask if anyone's got any kind of final thoughts before we close off. I'll come to you first, Chris.
Only that I think I'm putting the FA Cup to one side here. If we get anything against Everton, I hope that should be enough for us to secure top four. Because of the injuries, I just think it's been too much for us this season, and then we can just take stock and move on next year. But yeah, this weekend's game in terms of top four could be the biggest defining one in the season.
It's massive, definitely. You, Ben?
I'm quietly confident because if you look at Everton's fixtures, I think they've got Palace, United, Southampton, and I think they've got City. If anyone can tell me otherwise,
they do.
Yeah,
I can't see us. I'm not going to say that. I'm quietly confident we're going to get a result, and I don't think it's in doubt. My biggest concern is that FA Cup and make sure we can polish it all the way back to the Emirates.
Yes, let's hope so. I'm just going to go to their fixtures now. I think you're right. They've got...
I can tell you, if I looked this morning, it's Crystal Palace at home. They've got Sunderland. They've got Man City, Man United, Southampton away. Do they go to Hull on the last game of the season?
Yeah, they do.
Yes. Yeah, see, I'm quite looking at it fixture-wise. Even if we were to lose, worst case scenario, which I don't think will happen, our fixtures are winnable. We've got West Ham, Hull, Newcastle, West Brom, and then Norwich. So, on the face of it, they're all winnable games. Obviously, you don't like to say that because you look at Chelsea and Palace at the weekend. But I'd much prefer our fixtures than Everton's.
Yeah, good shout. And UFK?
Yeah, I think unlike the others, I'm going to go quite confident here. I'll stick my neck out on the line. I think we're comfortable for top four. I really do. I think even if Everton beat us, which is quite possible considering their recent form and the injuries that we've got, I think they've got a really tough run in, and I think they might just run out of legs. Whereas we've got players to come back. I think also the adrenaline boost of hopefully beating Wigan and having a cup final, hopefully in the back of our mind, will really push us on. So I think we'll get comfortable. I think we'll get top four comfortable. I even back us to get into the top three. I do. I think there's a team there that are gonna just have the wind taken completely out of their sail and they'll drop. So for me, there's a lot of ground to be optimistic. I think considering the last few years that we've had, and I know we've had a really long stint at the top of the Premier League table this year, but if we're all really honest with ourselves, I think at the start of the season we would have been very, very happy with the top four in an FA Cup. Not saying that we've won the cup yet, but you would certainly back back us to do so. So lots of optimism. Let's finish top 3, top 4. Let's win the FA Cup. Let's go all out in the summer for 2014-15 in terms of transfers. Let's get behind the big man, and let's just this is it. I think this is the start of something really special.
Yeah, I feel like going for a run now.
No, I completely agree, FK. Definitely no. But Ben, you made a good point as well. We're better off in our position than we are theirs as well. And actually, going back to the Barkley situation, I think they may get another year, especially if they say, "Look at Jack Rodwell," and that might change his mind a bit.
Yeah.
Also, in terms of final thoughts, I'm really looking forward to Bayern Munich, Manchester United, and I hope they destroy them. Cool. Okay, guys. FK, thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, mate, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. Anytime. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. And Suburban Gooners out.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.